I have not had Marky's monologue on today's show yet. We started off with Bo Ashini talking about his move from ETSU to Dartmouth as the men's soccer coach of the two various universities, and really the growth of soccer in the area. Of course, we just talked to Brian McGinnis about his vote for ETSU. It's going to be hard pressed for ETSU to get any more votes, but first time in 14 years that the Buccaneers got votes for the top 25, and for that matter, it should be mentioned that, as I said earlier in the show, the Buccaneers not ranked nationally, not in that top 25 since 1991. In fact, I'd have to even double check if it was the top 25 back then. I'm just thinking it might be the top 20. But anyway, they were 17th and all this at the time. But I mentioned before I want to talk some baseball, and that is what I've got right here, because this came out after yesterday's show that, I guess, on Rich Eisen's radio program, and Rich Eisen, by the way, a football guy, so maybe you ought to take this with a grain of salt. But the report was Major League Baseball, which is considering radical changes that amount to nothing more than gimmicks that I think will hurt the sport more than help. And case in point, an idea proposed by baseball executives, the same people that decided that the Cleveland Indians were the team of hate because they had a mascot logo that smiled at you. I was smiling, you can't have that. Florida State can have a logo that looks like it's being shot in the back, but, a smile, no, that's offensive. Well, have to wonder what kind of a person sees offense in that, but anyway. That not being said, or being said, I don't know. Here's the point. The idea was, in the ninth inning, if you're trailing, I suppose by any score, that instead of having the hitters due up in the order, a manager could decide to put up whatever hitters he wanted to. Choice of three. So in other words, it would seem to be that the 3, 4, and 5 hitters, or possibly the top of the order, would always be hitting in the ninth inning if a team was trailing, no matter what the batting order is. I'm going to be lengthy here, but I'm going to give you Marky's monologue now. Because Art Howe once told me a story about his days as a struggling backup infielder for the Pittsburgh Pirates many, many years ago. Art Howe used to manage the A's, the Astros, the Mets. And Danny Murtaugh called him up, middle inning pinch hitter, like the 5th or something like that. And he gets a walk in an inning where otherwise I don't know if anybody even reaches base. Pirates don't score. But late in the game, Willie Stargell wins it with a home run with 2 outs in a late inning. I forget if it was the 9th or if it was the 8th or something like that. But a 2-out home run, and Pirates win the game because of this dramatic Stargell home run. So the reporters go in the Three River Stadium locker room and they start asking Willie, tell us about the home run. He says, the guy you ought to talk to over there is Art Howe. Because if it wasn't for his walk, I wouldn't have had this time at bat. And I wouldn't have hit that home run. And Howe was just, he was a straight. I think Howe hit 171 that year, But that shows you the great leadership of Willie Stargell in that he would think of that and include the 25th player on the roster and this contribution as part of his own heroics and all that. But the thing is, that's the beauty of baseball, and that's something that you don't necessarily think about in baseball, that something like that could take place. And maybe it's a reason you don't call for an intentional walk then, in a middle inning. Or maybe it's a reason why you want to bear down on every hitter and not necessarily pitch around some. Or maybe you do walk the 8th man to get to the pitcher who strikes out with 2 outs, but then, lo and behold, that means in the next inning, the 3rd place hitter comes up with 2 on and nobody away instead of 1 out and a man on. That's baseball. That's the beauty of it. And they're talking about throwing it all away. Now, to tell you the truth, I don't think they're going to do it. I see the social media reaction to it. Nobody likes this idea. Nobody likes it. But, I mean, you know what it's like? It's like football saying, a 100-yard football field. No. Arena football at it right. Let's cut it down to 80. I mean, and you think about it even more, it would turn baseball into a game of specialization instead of the all-around athlete. I mean, if you don't have to worry about, if you can have your shortstop, who now has become a slugging position, my goodness, but if you can have, say, a middle infielder who only hits 3 times because in the 9th inning, if you're trailing, I mean, you just put up the heavy hitter anyway. Why do you need him to be anything but a glove man? Really, when you're assembling a team. And it's just another gimmick proposed to save a game that doesn't need it, that is going the opposite way of how it should be saved. It's going to kill, if it ever were to occur, and I don't think it will, it would kill competitive balance. It would turn baseball into a game of gimmicks, of pitch clocks and 3-inning starters and runners on second base in the 11th inning, which it seems like Rob Manfred really wants to have happen. I've got a Facebook follower called Tom Zacco who says, stop messing with our great game. Baseball does have a pace of play issue. Okay, I mean, you hear about, I've looked at the history of time of game. 1942, yeah, let's talk about it. Average length of game in Major League Baseball in 1942, it's 1 hour and 42 minutes. Now, I realize you don't have, TV commercials and all that, and they're leaving the gloves on the field, and relief pitching isn't what it is today. I get all that, but still, 1942, it's 1 hour and 42 minutes, and now it's 3 hours and 5. That's the average time of game in Major League Baseball last year. And the problem that I see is instead of trying to go back to the pace of play and to a style of play that everybody liked, because in 1942, baseball is unquestionably the most popular sport in America. Commissioner Rob Manfred seems intent on being this generation's Max Headroom and giving us new Coke. And then he gets praised by the media on, oh, isn't he so progressive? Thank you. Thank you for doing away with the intentional walk and Chief Wahoo on the Indian sleeve. Thank you. Baseball doesn't need gimmicks. It doesn't need to limit the amount of times a catcher can go out to the mound to settle down a shaky pitcher to prevent a big inning. It's not going to help when fans must now contemplate if, was it legitimate for the catcher to go out to the mound right there and, to calm down the rookie pitcher who's just walked 2 straight hitters? Yeah, it is. And it'll prevent big innings, which will shorten the time of game if that's what you're wanting. But your gimmick, only 6 times to the mound in a game, that's going to hurt pace of play more than help. And the game certainly doesn't need to throw away its batting order, its idea of everyone takes their turn, which is a very wonderful thing about the sport when you consider it. Everyone must take their turn. I mean, theoretically, I've got a football team. I can stuff it to the running back's gut all day long. But here, everyone must take their turn. You're throwing that away is the proposal. Again, I don't think it's going to work. And if you do that, it's going to inflate stats. Imagine, sluggers them coming up 5-6 times in a game instead of 4 or 5. Suddenly, a Giancarlo Stanton or an Aaron Judge would have a chance to break Barry Bonds' home run record, and it would be as much of a non-level playing field with the rules that are being proposed as, say, steroids were to inflate Bonds' stats, or Maguire's stats, or Palmeiro's stats, or whoever, Sammy Sosa. Now, I am going to say that what baseball needs to do is go back to the rules that made it perfect in the first place. And, I mean, I could go into why I don't like 2 wild cards and blah, blah, blah. And interleague play has, we need really an American and a National League again. I could discuss all these things. Again, I don't know how that happens. I mean, how do you reinstate, after you have made it all one Major League Baseball, an American and a National League, really legitimately competing with each other to make baseball better? Be it signing black players in 1947, be it expanding, be it, exploring Latin scouting that wasn't there before, be it reintroducing the stolen base. I mean, all these things happened over a period of time, in baseball. And now that it's all, one league, you don't have the same ability to compete with each other. The Angels and the Dodgers want to go up against, they want to have the best team, both of them. And certainly you'd have that in terms of franchises, but what about leagues pushing for it? Not so much. Anyway, here's how you improve baseball. Here's how you solve the pace of play issue. First of all, number 1, have umpires enforce Rule 804. What is Rule 804, you may ask? It is this: when bases are not occupied, a pitcher shall deliver the ball to the batter within 20 seconds after he receives the ball. Each time the pitcher delays the game by violating this rule, the umpire shall call ball. When did you ever see that happen? Daniel Norris is taking, on average, 27 seconds between pitches. I have him on this show. He doesn't even know it. When was this ever enforced? Why isn't it being enforced? There's no need to put a pitch clock in Major League stadiums. All you got to do is have the umpires enforce this rule. One of the beauties of baseball, one of the reasons we like it, is it has no clock. This isn't basketball where you need a shot clock. No, you don't need this. If an umpire's got to have a stopwatch on a field, okay. If instead you say, hey, third base umpire, do 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi until you get to 20 seconds, do it that way, whatever. But not knowing exactly how much time there is to throw will encourage pitchers to work with a faster pace. Look, guys, 3 years ago, AAA and AA leagues started using a pitch clock in their stadiums. And, initially it did kind of work because games were shortened by 15 minutes at maximum in the international leagues. Other leagues didn't have quite that, improvement of pace of play. But yeah, the International League initially had 15 minutes shaved off their game. Sounds pretty good. Maybe we ought to break with tradition, right? Except 2 years later, games are now 8 minutes longer when they were before. I'll tell you exactly what's happening. Pitchers are not becoming get ball, throw ball. Pitchers are now seeing that pitch clock and whittling it away like a point guard whittling away a shot clock. And you've all seen it happen in basketball. And, in fact, the pitch clock will, in fact, in time, cause games to last longer. Especially if, I got to pitch right now, ball. That, too many walks, or another thing that takes baseball too much time. Umpires, like I said, why can't they enforce 804? If the umpires union is actually hesitant to do their job, guess what? Fire them. Be a union buster. Joe West is maybe the greatest man in baseball today. Been an umpire since '76. One of the greats. He'll be in the Hall of Fame. He was suspended because Rob Manfred was politically correct at some point. I forget even why. I just remember it was stupid. They suspended him for 2 weeks last year, and guess what? Nobody missed him. And this is Joe West, who might be the greatest umpire ever. You can get away, you can bring in a whole new crop of umpires. Nobody's going to notice, really. I'd even consider reducing Rule 804 to the pitcher must throw within 18 seconds or even 15, because that would give us a more beautiful symmetry of 9s and 3s that the game has. Unless, of course, you use the DH, which I would get rid of. Again, got to do a players union. I'll tell you what you do. I say, okay, guys, here's what we do. You want, I'll give you an extra roster spot or two. Well, you got to get rid of this. It's not just that American League games take, on average, longer than National League games, which is not surprising. It's that in 1972, which was the last season in which pitchers hit in the American League, games averaged 2 hours and 27 minutes. Now they average, as I said before, 3:05. Are there any questions that this game is slowed down by the DH significantly? Do you have any questions whatsoever about that? And it breaks up baseball's beautiful symmetry of 9s and 3s. And you know what else? It has caused us to have crazy strategies. Originally in the American League, Billy Martin didn't know how to manage with a DH. He had Catfish Hunter. He became the manager of the Yankees in 1975, mid-season. Enough time for Catfish Hunter to make 13 starts. He did not relieve him in 12 of them. So in all but one of his starts, he went the whole route. Wound up with 30 complete games on the year. There was no time when you were trailing to pinch hit for your pitcher. The natural order of baseball. 4 years later, Hunter, a Hall of Famer, is out of the game. He's burned out. He's not 34 years old. 5 years later, Martin becomes the manager of the Oakland A's. He has a staff where the oldest pitcher is 28 years old, Rick Langford, throw 94 complete games. A's team leader in 80 in saves had 3. They finished in second place. It was a kind of a Cinderella team. They had lost 108 games the year before. Next year, they won a division title. Following year, the team collapsed, lost more than 90 games. Martin was fired. Why? All of his pitchers were shot. Only one of them had even met their 30th birthday. He had burned them out. We didn't know, or Martin didn't realize what he was doing. He had no, pinch hitter to take out the pitcher. And so a funny thing then happened. We began to overcompensate. We created something called the pitch count. It was always there, but it was somehow decided, because it sounds like a nice round number, 100 pitches would be enough for a starting pitcher. Just because it was a nice round number. No other reason. There's no real scientific data on this. And the strategy has led to devaluing the starting pitcher. It has led to athletes who are bigger and stronger than ever before today to be more babied than ever before. It has led to overspecialization. It's led to what has been a joyous moment, or should have been, the New York Mets' first ever no-hitter that Johan Santana pitched a few years ago. It actually ruins his career because he throws 131 pitches in it. 131! Steve Carlton would do that on every start he pitched for 100 years. We're not developing pitchers to go 9 to be strong now. Heaven forbid you go to an Appalachian League game and the guy lasts longer than 4 innings. He's got a pitch count of usually anywhere from 50 to, if it's really liberal, 75. Because that's how we develop pitchers now. We're actually we're creating a bunch of Rich Hills who can't get out of the 5th inning in the postseason, instead of a bunch of bulldogs who say, like hell, you're taking me out of this game. That can't be healthy for the sport. Product of the DH. And if it continues, then the Players Union has got to figure this out. Pitcher salaries are going to go way down because we're not going to have starting pitchers. We're going to have guys that we throw out there for one time through the order, say a right-hander, and then let's move it a lefty the next time through the order. And then, the lefty threw hard, so we'll throw a junk baller out there the next time through the order. And since we have the DH, we never have any pinch hitters, and it becomes where pitching is actually devalued and we don't pay for it. And we don't have stars. We'll have more pitching changes, including in the mid-8 inning. 6 visits to the mound or not. That's going to add length to the game. What manager allows his starter to go to the end of a frame in order to send up a pinch hitter in the next inning, even in the National League anymore? We've completely destroyed baseball strategy and the watchability of the game because of the DH. Keeps popular veterans in the game? Yeah, I'll give you that. Reggie Jackson, remember that fat head? He hit 194 as a 37-year-old. They kept him around 4 more years. He hit 500 home runs. Wasn't worth it. Way past his prime. That's what the DH does. Make it stop. You got to remember something else here. Outs are our friends. Baseball became the national pastime a century ago when pitchers were the stars. A low-scoring game is a fast-paced game and a close game. A 13-7 game is dull in comparison, even if the hometown slugger does club a couple of home runs. Baseball is no more all about home runs, although that's what it's becoming, than basketball is all about slam dunks. There is the diving catch, the stolen base, the play at the plate, the constant strategy, all taken away in modern-day baseball. No one is suggesting that baseball turned into soccer, though one must wonder if the millennial attention being diverted to the sport of soccer and why I would have a Bo Oshini on to start the show is because of the pace of play, the 2-hour duration of the games, and the fact low scoring means the games are consistently close. You do this, folks. Outs are, you're still going to have 10-9 seesaw games and slugfest. You're not going to take them away. You're still going to have an occasional 13-7 game, but they'll be less in abundance. You'll still have the 10-9 game. That'll still happen. But you know what I think of? I think of 1968, year of the pitcher. Bob Gibson, 1.12 ERA. Yaz leads the American League with a 3.01 batting average. And Ray Oyler is the starting shortstop of the world champion Detroit Tigers with a 1.35 batting average for the entire season. And you know what? Baseball is the most popular sport at that time in 1968, more so than football, and also the World Series is by far the most popular annual American sporting event there is. That's not the case anymore now, is it? Maybe you ought to go back to 1968 then, instead of trying to bring out the latest gimmick all the time. I've also said you got to limit time between innings, even in postseason games. It's my belief that advertising is better in and during the game than between innings. Give you an example. How many of you guys know what a white owl wallop is? Now, I know that's a baseball historian thing, but that's what Bob Wolf would call a Washington Senators home run when it was hit. It was sponsored by White Owl Cigars. That was many generations ago, 3 generations ago. That was the 50s. That's 15 years before I'm born, folks, that he's saying that. And I know it. Why? Because it's effective advertising. A cigar company is still getting bang for the buck off its advertising long after they've banned cigar advertising. Give you another example. I've listened to a replay of the 1960 World Series, middle of the 9th inning, right before Maz hits his home run. I can tell you that the sponsor of that spot was Chevrolet. They were advertising the 1961 Corvair. How do I know that? Because there was one ad. My point is a shorter break placed on premium. I'm going to keep figures real low here. Let's say you have a 3-minute break right now, and I'm going to keep the figures low right now because it's just easy to digest. You have a 3-minute break and you make $3 worth of advertising. I suggest to you that bang for the buck and replacing it with premium advertising, especially in something like the World Series, that if you had a 1-minute break and one ad, you could charge the same $3 for it and then have in-game reads like the aforementioned White Owl Wallop and make actually more money off the broadcast, and the advertisers would get more bang for their buck. I can remember a one ad in the 60 World Series. I know of long-defunct franchises, their marketing strategy, because it happened in-game. You don't have that now. You're not getting the bang for the buck. This is the way to do it, and it'll shorten the game. It's win-win all the way. Call high strikes. Keep strike zones consistent among umpires. I do not understand the idea of decreasing the size of the strike zone. Certainly balls are pitches not swung on, not pitches put in play, and not pitches that advance the plate appearance as rapidly as strikes do. So why increase the probability of bases on balls by reducing the strike zone as has been proposed? Walks increase the time of a game. Shouldn't, therefore, baseball be trying to reduce their proclivity instead of developing a rule that would increase them? And also, as I said before, encourage durability from pitchers. Pitchers are bigger and stronger today. Why can't they go 9? If you have the pitcher only throw 5 innings every 5 days, you can't really call him a star. You've got 13 spots on the roster for pitchers. nowadays, their star power is significantly reduced, less recognition from fans, time-consuming pitching changes, less salary for the pitcher. And again, the game was not constructed to have this DH and mid-inning pitching changes. I mean, it's in the rules. You can have it if you got to have Lefty Jones come up against Joey Votto. Don't get me that. I mean, I understand that. Don't get me wrong. But for every time we hear how ineffective a pitcher is the third time through the order, it should be noted, 2013 Baseball Prospectus indicated a pitcher's on-base percentage increases a mere 8 points the third time through the average. That's hardly a reason to replace a pitcher throwing well with one of less skill. What did this strategy do in the World Series back in 2016? It meant not reasonable work for a starting pitcher, but rather overwork for Aroldis Chapman. The result was Rajai Davis's 3-run homer to tie the 7th game. Dare I mention Dave Roberts' use of Rich Hill? It is as if starting pitchers are not now dominant, but apologetic for lasting beyond the 5th inning. This is progress. So, you want to increase the pace, or you want to decrease the pace of play? I'm telling you how to do it. I'm telling you how to do it right now. None of these gimmicks. Enforce 804, 20 seconds between pitches. Get rid of the DH. Be a man to the union, guys. Outs are our friends. Limit time between innings. Even in postseason games, those in-game ads are great. Call the high strikes, keep the strike zones consistent among all umpires, and encourage durability from pitchers. Folks, that's why, well, I should have Rob Manfred's job. Tri-City Sports Now.